Hello, this is Tim from Tiger Astronomy, and in this video I'm going to take a look at how to save your driver's window position using the ASCOM Settings Provider. Now, it might be a good idea to have a look at what problem I'm trying to solve here before we go any further. So what we'll do is I'll remote into my observatory, and that's Visual Studio. We're just remoting in, and here we go. And we have a dual screen set up here. Let's just close that window down. We don't need that for what we're doing. And as you can see, I've got MaximDL up on the right screen here, and over on the left screen I've got all kinds of apps set up. There's ACP and ACP Scheduler, and down here is my weather monitoring system. And here are my drivers here. These are all drivers that I've written. So and you'll notice that they're arranged neatly on the screen. And let's take a look at the sort of problem I'm trying to avoid here. So if we get out Focus Max, for example, and the windows are all over the place. So actually I want Focus Max to be right here in this gap, and I want it to stay there. Anyway, if I quit from Focus Max, and then we go in and run it again manually here from the Start menu. So Focus Max, and oh look, the window's gone back. Windows has put it back in the center of the primary monitor because, well, where else? Well, wouldn't it have been nice if it remembered where it was? Because, like, look at all the windows I've got open. Every time I open my observatory, I have to reposition all these windows, except my drivers don't need repositioning. They stay, and I'll prove this to you. Let's take the weather monitoring window, and I'll move it right into the middle of the screen there. And then in ACP, I think this is actually going to take a bit of doing. Let's just, okay, let's stop the dispatcher. And let's close the scheduler, and we'll close it.
ACP scheduler has released me.
ACP is a bit chatty. Let's close ACP, and we don't need to do that because it's already parked.
Disconnecting scope.
Weather's unsafe.
Disconnecting dome. Disconnecting rotator. Disconnecting weather. Disconnecting camera. Goodbye.
Bye. Okay, so here's my weather driver here. Interesting that the okay, so I've got ASCOM remote server running here. So if we just have a look at, have I? Yes, I have. There it is. So if we just exit from that as well, and see if the rest of the drivers close down. And let's close Focus Max. And the weather might go away in a minute, or it might not. There's a few other things. Maxim might be using it. Okay, well, anyway, regardless of that, let's start up the ASCOM remote tools again. ASCOM remote. REST server, and there we go. And let's connect all the drivers and see where the windows go. Oh, there's one.
Connecting to drive system.
What's the telescope?
Set site latitude to north 51 degrees 20 minutes and 39 seconds. Set site longitude to east 1 degrees 16 minutes and 38 seconds. Unparking.
Okay, so as you can see, all the windows have gone back exactly where they were before. So this is a rather easy to accomplish, and I'll show you how to do it. So log out of the observatory, and in Visual Studio here I've got open two projects that I've just created using the ASCOM templates. So I've got this thing here called Windows Saver, which is a local server project. So this is going to be the ASCOM device server, and then this guy up here, Degenerate Driver, is actually a weather safety monitor, which I've chosen that because it's just a really simple driver that has like one property, and it's not going to do anything anyway. But in the local server driver is this main form window. Here it is, this one, and it has this message in it that says this is an ASCOM driver, not a program for you to use. But when I write local servers, I like them to have some kind of useful status display. So we'll just make this window a bit bigger and delete that message, and we'll do something with this later. But what we do isn't relevant for this example. So okay, now I mentioned that we were going to use the ASCOM Settings Provider, and I have other videos on the more detailed videos on the Settings Provider if you're interested in that, and I will link to that in the description. And so first thing we need to do is add the Settings Provider, and I'm going to do it in the local server project. And we're going to look at, actually let's zoom in on the code screen so you can see that better. There we go. And what I'm going to do, first of all, I haven't okay, perhaps we should run this project first just to prove that it does. So let's go ahead and run it. And as I say, these are minimal projects straight from the ASCOM templates. I've made hardly any changes to these. And here we go. Here's our window. So that's it, really. Now, okay, so we'll quit from that. Hopefully that will come out of debug mode. It was never in debug mode. So how do we save the window position? Because currently, if I run that again, let's try it, run again. Okay, the window comes up there. So I want to move it onto this monitor over here and close it and run it again. And oh, it's gone back to this monitor. Okay, so it's the same problem. Windows is putting the window wherever it wants to put it. So first thing we'll do is add the settings provider, and in order to do that, let's just see if we've got yeah, it's not referenced by default. I did put the settings provider in the templates at one point when it got taken out because somebody didn't like it. So okay, add reference ASCOM Settings Provider, that one, reference, okay, okie doke. Okay, now we need to generate a setting, and the way to do that probably is to get out properties and go into settings. Project does not contain a default settings file. Click to create one. Okay. I'm going to put an example setting in here, which is just has some kind of fake value in it. Okay, and I'm going to click on, where is it? Here we go. So this little button up here, view code, and when I click it, watch down here in the project, and you will see a new file appear. Clink. There it goes. So my settings.cs. Okay. Okay, what we need to do here is we need to add the we need to add an attribute called Settings Provider attribute. And we need to be careful, not ASCOM Settings Provider, it's Settings Provider in System Configuration. Now look, there are two here, and I don't know why it comes up with two. I really don't know. I wish I knew, but ignore. Make sure you get the first one. I think it's the first one. We'll soon know. So the Settings Provider, we need to import that namespace. Let ReSharper do that for me. Now you'll notice that ReSharper added this line up here for me. Okay, so I'm hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. So the Settings Provider we need to add here is type of ASCOM dot Settings Provider. That one there. Now if that line works, we've got the right things and everything. Okay, good. That's all work. And as well as adding the Settings Provider attribute, we need to add another attribute which tells the ASCOM Settings Provider which device we're saving settings for, because it can't work it out at runtime. So we need to supply this information here. So this will be using the device ID attribute, and in here we put the device ID of the ASCOM driver. So it will be degenerate.safety monitor, and let me just check I got that right. In the driver class, okay, it is, yeah, ASCOM degenerate safety monitor. Now this is a dry violation. Dry meaning don't repeat yourself. Ideally I would convert this to a const and export it, and basically, but just for quickness, I'm just redefining the string here. It doesn't really matter for this example. And the other optional parameter that you can put in here is the chooser name. This doesn't matter for this use because the Settings Provider only looks at the device ID. Except that it might, there are some circumstances under which the Settings Provider can automatically register an ASCOM driver in the device profile, and in that case it would be handy to have a chooser name. So we'll degenerate sample driver. Okay, and got a big old red squiggly underline here. So what's going on? Oh yeah, doesn't contain a constructor that takes two arguments, device ID. So perhaps we have to put forget how this works. The first argument is a positional parameter, and the device name is a optional named parameter. So you have to say device name equals. This is just the way attributes work. Okie dokie. And it's like that because device name is optional, I think. It's a long time ago since I wrote that attribute, so I can't remember. But hey, there we go. That should be it, right? So we'll save that file. And then we will build our project. There's the build on my other screen. That's successful. And I'm going to run the project. And here is the window. So far so good. And okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up the ASCOM Profile Explorer and see if it's created my settings. Okay, there we go. So if we look under weather safety, did I call it weather safety monitor? I've probably just messed up my registry. It should have been called weather safety. No. Oh no, safety monitor's good. So I'm not seeing a degenerate driver in here. Why would that be? Is that possibly because I've not tried to access any settings yet? So, okay, what we'll do, let's assume that's working. And so now we come to the meat of how to save your window position. We can go back to form main here. And if we get the properties up for that window, hopefully you can see this. I'm sorry, it's a bit small. If we look up at the top here under application settings, and we can bind the allocation of the window to a new setting, and that's really hard to see on my color scheme. It's blue, but it says new, so I'm clicking new, and the default value 00. Name is okay. So main form window location. Main form window location. Scope is user because I want the user to be able to edit this. The convention here should be for ASCOM. If in doubt, just leave it set to user. But if it's a setting you want the user to edit in the normal process of using the driver, set the scope to user. And if it's a setting that just sets a default value for something, but you don't really want the user to edit it, then you can use the application scope. And the settings then it doesn't actually really do much for an ASCOM driver, but it's kind of indicative to you, the developer, what your intentions were, and so it's a good thing. So I usually use this for things like serial port parameters. So if I'm connecting to a device which uses fixed parameters, so it's a fixed baud rate, and the handshaking, it uses no handshake, 8 bits, no parity, 1 stop bit, and I'll put all those things in settings but set them to application scope, so then I get default values for them, and it just says to me they're not really intended to be edited by the user. So we're going to use user scope for this because we do want the user to be able to change this. And okay, that's it done. Okay, I think that's it done really. Now at the moment, okay, if we run that, the window should try and read its location. And let's just have a look at the code. That might be interesting. No, this isn't the code I wanted. This is not the code you're looking for. Let's have a look at form main designer. There we go. And so we're looking behind the curtain now in this thing here that says Windows Form Designer generated code. We're not really supposed to change this. And if we look for there should be something here. Here, look, location. Okay, so location equals property settings default main form window location. Okay, so that's this thing, property, your application namespace properties.settings.default is where your settings go, and that's where you can access them at runtime. And you can just access them straight from there. They're strongly typed, and there's no need to take them out. And when you need to edit your settings, you can bind the settings directly to controls on the setup dialog in a similar way to what we just did for the window location. So that's great. I'm not going to change that, but we will run this because the act of reading that setting should cause the profile to be created. Okay, so let's have a look again. So in case it isn't obvious, here's my window. The program is running. And let's have another look at the ASCOM device profile. There it is. And safety monitor drivers. Say, hey, look at this. ASCOM degenerate safety monitor. Okay. ASCOM degenerate safety monitor auto-registered by settings provider. Okay, so normally your setup would do this, but this is great for debugging because it just registers the driver. So we've got example setting, and we've got main form window location, which doesn't seem to have a value, which is interesting. Because, well, it does make sense because we've never saved the settings yet. We've only loaded them. So the default values come from, if we look at this thing here, settings.settings, under the properties folder of the local server, and we've got settings.designer.cs, and here we go, we have example settings, and we have in here, there we go, default setting value is Yoo-hoo, okay, and down here we have a default value of 00. So how do we get these? How do we get the Windows position to save? Well, the way I generally do it is, and there are pros and cons to this, but the way I generally do it is I find the, let's go into properties, let's go into event handlers, and there is a location changed, I believe. Location changed, there we go. So if we double click that, and that creates an event handler for us, and then in this event handler we can just say properties, come on, why can't you find it? Never do a live demo. There it is, properties dot settings dot default dot save. Okay, now that's the result of that is going to be anytime I move my window is going to save my settings. So that may or may not be what you want, but for me I found that works quite well. So let's just do that again. I will so just so you can see what I'm doing here, I go over onto my other screen. So I'm clicking my run button down here, which is a resharper tool, and boink, 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 boink. Got some warnings there coming up. Oh, hey, look, the program's still running, it's trying to overwrite it. So we've got to close that, then run it again. Okay. There we go. Now, so notice that this window has loaded at position 00, okay? So I'm going to move that over to the right hand side of the screen there, close it, and run again. Haha, look, position saved, which is exactly what we want. So this also works. So okay, now I've actually got 3 monitors on my development system. I'm only showing 2 of them here, but if I move that screen over onto my other monitor and drop it there and quit from it, and then I run the code again, it's over there on my second monitor, which is perfect. And if we look in the ASCOM Profile Explorer now, Profile Explorer, and into here, and we can see safety monitor drivers, degenerate safety driver, and look, here we go. Now we've got settings. Okay, settings values. Now this has a negative X coordinate, which is how it gets onto the my second monitor, which is my left hand monitor. Okay, So that all works as expected, and if you do that in your drivers, then it means your users will be able to put the windows where they want them, and next time they run the driver, the window will come back to that position, and I think it's a real benefit to the user to do that, because the windows just stay where they put them. So that's it. I've been Tim from Tiger Astronomy. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.